Okay, welcome to Second Drafts Podcast. Everything you need to write, edit, and publish your way. I'm Jeremy.
And I'm EJ.
And today on Second Drafts, we'll be talking about us. So we're doing a relatively new podcast here, and so we want to introduce ourselves the right way. So basically what we're going to be doing today is interviewing each other for us and for you. It's actually our first time speaking together, isn't that right, Ethan?
Yeah, it is. It's a bit of a new thing going on here, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I was kind of prepared for your exotic accent there.
You reckon?
Yeah, I knew some people actually from South Africa. They moved over to a place relatively close to where I live, and knew them through family friends, so they had same accent as you there. So,
that's interesting.
For those who don't know, Ethan is currently in South Africa. So,
and born and bred,
and I'm from New Brunswick, Canada. So,
there you go.
On pretty much different spectrums of the world here. So,
yeah.
All right, so let's get into that interview there. So,
okay.
So we'll get right into it. First question. So, Ethan, what inspired you to write your novel there, The Birth of Chaos?
Birth of Chaos is... I've had this story floating around in my head for 10 years or more, probably. And it's just... I've always been a fan of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, and just love the magic in there and the way the stories are written. And to a lesser extent, the Songs of Ice and Fire series as well.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, I actually said that incorrectly. Sheesh, sorry, that's the first one already. Can we just do that part over? Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries, go right ahead.
Okay. I've always been a fan of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, and I just love the way it's written and the magic system in it. And to a lesser extent, I'm also a fan of the Song of Ice and Fire series, but, who isn't nowadays with the TV series being so popular?
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I've always been keen to write a story about, sword and sorcery. That's obviously the genre that I like. But I've tried to infuse it a bit with more family values and, I'm inspired by those kinds of things. So yeah, that's first book in what I hope is a very long series.
I hope so too. I read it, and I'm definitely eagerly anticipating that next one.
I am very glad. And what about you? Your Queen Anne's Revenge and your Blackbeard series, actually. How did that come about?
Well, as we were talking about earlier there, I am a little bit of a gamer. I like video games. And I was playing this particular game, and it was interesting because they said something about the ship being the treasure. And so it ended up being different in the game, but it basically kind of made me think, like, all the pirate adventure series, they're always looking for treasure, they're following maps to like hidden locations and solving puzzles and riddles and that sort of thing, and it's always for treasure. So what if the ship itself was what they were looking for, sort of thing? And so that kind of snowballed into what we have today as with Blackbeard. And I've always loved pirates, and Blackbeard is my favorite pirate. So,
of course,
had to kind of incorporate that in there, and it's kind of a spin on that history, and a little bit of mix of Pirates of the Caribbean, of course, in there as well. Can't help but be inspired by that. So,
of course. Okay, great.
So your novel is really long, like it's huge. So what was the hardest part of writing that? Was it the length, or?
I think, well, at first, the hardest part is always, just for me, getting the whole thing down in first draft form. I don't know, I just have so much trouble with getting myself to sit down and actually putting words on paper or, well, on file. So I think it's a bit of a perfectionist tendency with me. Mm-hmm. I find I struggle a bit with that, and I'm hoping that at some point we'll be looking at some strategies for defeating perfectionism. But as soon as you've got the whole thing down, then the hardest part becomes actually deciding what to keep. There were several parts. There was a whole sub-story with a tiger that was actually meant to be in the story from the beginning. I've always wanted it there. And right at the end, I had to decide, look, it was even longer. It was 260,000 words. And at some point I had to decide, look, CreateSpace just won't let me print this length of book. It's becoming too thick.
Really?
So, yeah. So I had to make some drastic cuts. But I think the end result was definitely stronger for it. So I don't regret it.
I didn't know that they had limits on that side of things. That's interesting.
Yeah, not hard limits. It's just the way the pricing starts to work out. If you look at it, you start having to charge $30 for a book, and that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and how about you? Your Blackbeard series?
Well, as you probably already know, since Ethan has been editing my past couple novels there, I am not very good at grammar or punctuation and that sort of thing. So I wouldn't say that that's the hardest part of writing a novel, but editing it myself, like trying to find those things and cut it down and make it at least a little bit easier for your side of things, is definitely the most difficult, and just trying to stay motivated while editing. Because I really enjoy the creation side of writing, but then editing it's more difficult.
Yeah, it comes back to a bit of, the one doesn't feel like work, I think, and the other one suddenly feels like work, and I think that becomes
nobody likes to work.
Yeah, well, if we have the choice. But no, you don't have to worry. It's not like the manuscripts you send me have that much work in them. It's not that bad. Trust me. I think you may think it's a bit worse than it is.
Well, we're always our hardest critic, I think. So
definitely.
Okay, so I'm interested in this one personally because again, I love your story there. So, if your novel was turned into a TV show or a movie, who do you think would play whom?
Oh, that's a tough one, but I think all writers dream about this one, don't they?
Yeah.
I think everybody has this thing in the back of their mind. Look, it's a very tough one, especially for the children in the story. I honestly don't know, because child actors, they move so quickly and they grow up so quickly, and by the time you think, oh, this might be a good one, then next thing you know, they're grown-up actors. So for the children characters, I really have no idea. But for my grown-up characters, I would say for Queen Thurinya, I have a soft spot for Charlize Theron. Mm-hmm. And this is blatant favoritism, you might be able to tell, since she's one of our most, our proudest exports from South Africa. But I really do love her acting, and I love her as an actress and everything she does. So I can really imagine her doing that role well. And then I think for the male characters, I'm also not very sure about. I think Aeolus is supposed to be this upstanding, noble-looking soldier. So I guess someone like Sullivan Stapleton might work. And then for Ajira, for her bit of an evil streak, I think Ava Green would be very good. With those evil-looking eyes, I think she makes a fantastic villain. But yeah, those are the only ones that I really have a clear picture of. Mm-hmm. How about you? Blackbeard's Revenge, who would play your characters?
Well, I was just looking up there who I was thinking of. Gerard Butler, are you familiar with him?
Oh, yes, I am.
I think he would make a great Blackbeard. And I mean, it's just looking at the movie 300 and just his screams and his beard and everything like that. It just seems to fit right there. But he's a little older, so it's like
he's a bit older.
Yeah, I'm kind of
Blackbeard's more around 20, I think.
Yeah, in my stories, so he wouldn't do for a young Blackbeard, unfortunately. So I'm not sure who could be a younger one, but I think he would be fun for a Blackbeard type character.
Yeah, definitely.
As far as the other character, the other main character, Anne, I'm not too sure on her. The only redhead that I can think of is can't think of her name anymore now, unfortunately. But
how about Isla Fisher?
Isla Fisher. She's a little bit older though. I'm thinking
she is now. Yeah, I think I still remember her from her younger days.
I'm looking it up here right now. The girl from Amazing Spider-Man, though.
Emma Stone.
Emma Stone, yeah. She played a redhead in a couple films there, so I think she has kind of that look.
Definitely. She would make a fantastic Anne, I think. But it's strange how many actors from, I just realized, how many actors from the 300 movies we took, because there's Gerard Butler, there's Eva Green, and Sullivan. So there's 3 of them from the 300 movies. That's a bit strange.
I guess we just like that film.
Maybe we do.
So what draws you to writing? Like, when did you decide that you wanted to write? Because you're in IT, right?
Yes, I'm an IT by day. Just a code monkey. And, then in my spare time, I reckon I do something a bit more creative. Look, I think I've dreamed of writing books since I was in high school, maybe. And, at that time I realized I had a bit of a knack for writing. I liked it. It was fun to do. And, my parents were big readers as well, so as I grew up, my house was one where books were very much respected and cared for. So I think that might all be a part of it. I just grew up with this culture of writing, and I think I like the idea of being able to contribute to that. It's almost like a legacy thing. So that's pretty much it for me, I think. And what about you?
Well, when I was younger, it's almost like I'm beating a dead horse here, but I really was into video games, mainly. And definitely, like, my parents, they taught me how to read and everything. It wasn't a matter of comprehension. It was just more attention span, really. And I wanted to get into video games, but because of the story. And, I wanted to create a story there and just kind of almost do the same thing as what I felt when I was younger, playing those games.
Okay.
But then as I was almost starting to actually get into that, I found that the people who do the coding, like kind of almost like on your side of things there, they don't have any say in the story. And
yeah, they wouldn't.
Yeah, and story isn't really a big focus when it comes to video games, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Certain ones definitely are more story-oriented, but it's still not really the focus. And so then I kind of just started dabbling in writing, and I've found that I did enjoy writing. Like, I do read, just to not alarm anyone there who might be listening there, but I do read. But just before basically exiting high school, like, I didn't read too much and didn't write anything. So it was basically after high school, that's when I started and just found a passion for it. So I kept going. And then
that's great stuff.
Eventually ended up, of course, self-publishing there. And just like yourself, with the self-publishing side of things, did you try going traditional, or
Self-pub versus trad pub. I see. Actually, no, I haven't actually ever tried the traditional route. I'm still new to this quite, so I haven't had a lot of time in it. But I must say I like the idea with self-pub, the freedom you've got. I can't imagine putting all this work into a story and then not even getting to choose the cover. That would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
I had so much fun getting the cover done for my first book. Turned it into a contest over at 99 Designs. And I mean, that was a lot of fun, and I can't imagine going without that. To me, it's almost, it's part of the whole process. So I think, how about you? Did you ever try traditional publishing?
Not really. Like, when I first started to get into the writing side of things, just finding out that, rejection is very commonplace, and they generally choose more to the market rather than if a story is really good or not. So, like, I don't really feel like writing the next Twilight. I'd rather write what I want to write, right?
Yes. Please stick to Blackbeard. That's
so. Yeah, I basically went for the self-publishing just because of that, the freedom that it gives with creating and writing a story. And I've never really tried for the traditional publishing side of things. I mean, if somebody was to approach and give me a nice big advance, then for sure I'd probably take that. But for now,
it depends on the deal.
Yeah. For now, I definitely gonna stick with the self-publishing. So, all right.
Good.
So, I'm interested in who inspires you, and we can also, I guess, kind of tie it in with the next question there as well. Are they your favorite author, and why? Like, if it is an author that inspires you.
Okay. It just occurred to me right when you asked the question that, well, I did select an author, but I suppose it wasn't completely necessary for it to be an author. But no, by chance it is. At the risk of sounding cliched, I think I would say Stephen King, which is, I think many people might say this, but I don't know, there's just something about the way he writes when I read his books tend to make me want to get up right there and go right on my story, which is, we're not even writing the same genre, so I can't explain it. I don't know why.
Well, what about his Dark Tower series, I think it's called?
Fair enough. He does write in the fantasy genre. I haven't read that yet. I really should, and I really want to. But is he still writing on that, or is that done already? I haven't been keeping up with it.
I think it's done. I haven't read it myself either, but I've heard a lot of good things, and also heard rumors that they're going to be possibly making it into a TV show.
Yes. He's been doing Under the Dome.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine this one not getting its own show. But another thing about Stephen King is, I read his kind of his memoir. Well, not quite, but quasi-memoir on writing. And I always come away from that story, from that book, inspiring to jump in on my next book. And I mean, when you look at what he writes, there is proof that you can write awesome stories even while you're going through some pretty dark times in your life. So a lot of things you can get past and write past, and it's a bit scary to think of sometimes, but even these situations can generate some of the, his books are some of the most iconic books of our generation.
Yeah.
But for favorite author, I must say my favorite author tends to be whoever wrote the last fantastic book I've read.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, that was just Robert Jordan, because I was such a fan of Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went through my horror phase, so it was Dean Koontz for a bit, and then it was Stephen King for a bit. And then recently, I must say, I discovered Joe Abercrombie and the First Law series. Some fantastic writing in there, and I don't know whether I'd go as far as to say he's my favorite author now, but, he's right up there, contending with the rest. And then if all goes well, next will be Scott Lynch, I'm hoping.
Well, let's face it, Ethan. Obviously, your favorite author is me, right?
Of course. Naturally. Definitely top 5.
You don't have to, not mention it just because this is our podcast.
I'm trying to keep you modest. I'm trying to just, So what about you? Favorite author, inspiring much?
Well, for author of novels, definitely I found the author DJ McHale, who wrote this series called Pendragon. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it. It's actually more kind of young adult fiction there. That's kind of when I read it as well, when I was a young adult there. And just the way that he can create a story and create a world where it feels like anything can happen. Like, I just really love that sort of a style. Like, just if you go into the next book there, like, anything can happen, and it's all kind of self-explanatory, like in the makeup of the world. Like, yeah, this can happen type thing. So, like, you can have weird things, kind of weird occurrences, and it's all just kind of normal in that fictional world. And I just really like that style of a story, and that really it was one of the things that inspired me to get writing as well. And there's another series. It's actually a comic called One Piece. It's a Japanese comic there, and kind of almost the same thing. It's actually about pirates as well, and that kind of inspired me for my current series. But just same kind of situation. Like, he's created this world where, like, anything can happen in it, and just so imaginative, and it just blows me away every time. So that definitely is inspiring to me for sure.
Awesome.
And those are also my favorite authors there. But I definitely, same as you, I love The Wheel of Time. The first book, at least. Unfortunately, it kind of went downhill for me after that. But I also like the sort
That's a lot of downhill.
Well, like, I don't know. We'll talk about it another day, but our gripes on that, but on other books. But I like the Sword of Truth series, like that one, and the Game of Thrones, the sort of the Song of Ice and Fire as well. I really like those. Just the way that it's really mature, the Song of Ice and Fire, and
definitely
how, like, he does like kill off some of his key characters, but it's like that kind of would happen because it's more realistic. Like, the characters aren't being smart, so obviously something is going to happen to them, type thing. So just like making
not many people have the guts to do that to their characters, I must say.
Yeah. But I mean, it just it really feels like a natural flow with that, and that I want to make sure, like, as best as I can. Of course, I'm not as good as these guys, but like, I try to think about that, like, if this would happen, what would really happen? Not, giving them plot armor, as it were. So that
much more preferable.
Yeah, definitely inspires me there. So
fantastic.
On to the next question there. What do you love/hate about writing?
Okay, I'll probably begin with a hate, because just it's tough, because I love writing in general, but I must admit that I love having written more. Sometimes the writing itself is just, I don't know, sometimes it feels like a bit of a chore. And I think that's probably linked to my bad case of perfectionism that I'm always having to battle against, because I find it so difficult to move on to the next part, next chapter, next section if I don't feel like the one that I just finished is perfect. And of course it never is perfect. That's just one of those things, and it's really a long battle. But but then there are those times when the writing just flies. The story just seems to write itself just goes, and you kind of lose 2 hours, and you think, whoa, where did all the time go? And you sit here and you've got 2,000 new words, and that is nice.
Yeah.
But I must say, often this is while I'm writing the histories. Things that'll almost never appear in the story itself, but are, background info that I need to know how the world operates and who this character is. And so writing the histories and doing the world building sometimes just sucks me in, and I can spend hours just building worlds. But of course, then at some point I need to come back out and do the actual story writing, otherwise that's all going to be for nothing.
Yeah.
But, in short, that's mine. How about you? Loves and hates?
Well, I kind of already mentioned them already there, but definitely I do not like editing.
Yeah, of course.
And my biggest love about writing is just creating, and it's always corny when somebody says it, but like hearing the character's voice kind of coming out there and just happening naturally, like certain parts of the novel there, like I had plans in mind, but because of the characters, like it happened a lot earlier than what I had anticipated, because of just how things were progressing and how I knew that they would react, sort of, and it would happen a lot sooner rather than later. No spoilers, of course, but I'm sure you understand that. So.
Oh, definitely. And the characters kind of take on a life of their own and just tweak the story this way and that way, and yeah, it's fantastic sometimes having that happen.
Mm-hmm. Like it feels like. Speaking of your story there, like the assassin character almost kind of felt to me like that. It seemed like maybe you had something in mind, but then like it felt like kind of went off in a better direction almost. Maybe? I'm not sure.
You actually picked up on that. That was, I promise you, that was, she was not intended. She was not a character that I even thought about. She was this mousy little servant girl, and at the point where I wrote her on the ship the first time, where the Queen just chases her out of the cabin, she was literally just a regular servant girl. When I created her, she was just that. And it was only much later in the story when I thought, this needs something, there's something missing. And all of a sudden, I don't know, that just happened. It was crazy, actually. I didn't realize that it comes through so clearly in the story. I might have to look at that.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I actually picked up on it there, but I don't know, just I really like that character, so I paid attention to that.
Yeah, well, then you're going to like the second book, I think. We'll have to wait until we get there.
Yeah, you gotta stop teasing me on that, jeez.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned there about writing a couple thousand words there in a couple hours. So, what's your typical day like when you're writing? Do you sometimes manage that, or is that more few and far between? Or
writing a couple of thousand words in 2 hours is pretty much few and far between at the moment. Because what I do at the moment is I get up at 5 in the morning, or just before 5. By 6, I'm at the office for my day job. Mm-hmm. I'm at the office from 6 to 6, because usually I can't get away from there. The traffic is too hectic. So I wait it out. Luckily, all the waiting around gives me some time. So in the morning, between 6 and 8, I can typically get about 2 hours done. It's a bit difficult to concentrate in the office because, of course, I mean, you're there in a place that's not your home, and it's work. Mm-hmm. So focusing there can be a bit of a challenge. And then over lunchtime, I take an hour to write if I have no editing going on. And then in the evening, I get home, and usually I am too tired after a full day of working. I usually think by myself, well, there's at least 3 hours in the evening before I have to go to bed. But, you've got a family, and you have to give attention to your household, your family, your pets, other things that need attention as well. So usually if I'm lucky, I get about those 2 hours a day in the morning between 6 and 8. That's about the best I can hope for.
Yeah.
And how about you?
Well, basically almost the same. Just waking up there, and I catch up on different sites and emails and everything like that. So just try and get those out of the way first off, and then right now I'm trying to work on the tutorial videos that if you've been on our YouTube video, you should probably already have seen one there. Just working on those, getting them scripted out, and trying to get them shot and everything. And then I'll probably look them over, edit them, and have to reshoot them again a couple of days later.
Of course.
And as far as writing, unfortunately, that's kind of taken a back seat at the moment. But generally, if I am in the writing phase of things, I like to write for a few hours and then break it up, almost kind of take breaks in between when I can. And just keep that flow going. So just write, break, that sort of thing. So.
Okay. Sounds good.
So
sounds busy.
Yeah. A little too busy, unfortunately. So hopefully I can get on top of it and then get back to actually writing again. These videos are taking up a lot of my time, so.
Yeah.
Hope you guys appreciate it.
I'm sure they will.
So, how do you come up with your ideas there? I know that we talked about it a little earlier, how kind of they flow naturally with the characters, but plot definitely you need to plan in advance. So, like, how do they come about?
Ideas for plot? I must say, I'm a bit of a gamer as well, myself, so I tend to get around with all the different games and the stories there, and I do watch a lot of movies. I don't usually go out, looking specifically for plot ideas. I just sometimes it happens. Something about a game will strike me as interesting. And like this last week, pardon me, I played a lot of Crusader Kings, and I must say that getting to know how the counties and duchies and kingdoms and things mesh together, and how vassals and lieges and all those things work, has given me quite a few new ideas for parts of my story that do use those mechanics, like the different lords that report to the king and how they might be backstabbing one another, and this one might be having the other one's child as a ward and have that as leverage in negotiations and stuff. So a lot of interesting things that just kind of show up as you go about your life in general, I suppose. But you will know about that being a gamer yourself. I'm sure that's a big influence for you as well.
Yeah, well, definitely, like I mentioned it at the beginning there, but just certain things will happen, and like it'll make me think of something in a really random way, and that's kind of what gives me that inspiration, and then I have to make sure that I write it down before I forget it.
That's a big thing. I'm terrible at that. There must be 100 ideas that I've just forgotten by now because I must really, stick to that and keep myself dedicated to that. But
yeah. But yeah, so like something will happen, like as I was mentioning with the game there, they'll just say a sentence and I'll kind of pick out 2 words and I'll just think about it for some reason, and it'll just kind of give me that idea. As far as like the actual plot, sometimes I'll have to just kind of actually think it out one by one, like kind of what I want to happen or what I'd like to see, and then it definitely develops over the course of writing as well. Like with most of them, I have a couple ideas in mind of what I want to happen, but as I'm writing it, more stuff will come about. And once as I, like the middle parts basically, once as I reach the plot, that's where it kind of just happens naturally.
Yeah, sounds good. sounds about right.
Yeah. So when you get, say, stuck on a particular plot point or in your writing there, writer's block, how do you kind of deal with that?
Okay, I've had a couple of instances of that happening. I don't really... I prefer not to believe that something like writer's block really exists, although, you have to admit that there are times when it feels much more difficult to write than others. So, listless periods where I want to write, but actually sitting down and getting it done is... But one thing I've found that helps is having multiple projects in different genres, so that, when one blocks me and my mind just refuses to work on a fantasy story, then when I switch over to my sci-fi story, sometimes it just, jiggles something loose, and I find that I can work on the sci-fi, but I suspect it's that I just sometimes get tired of the one story, and, giving myself a break and working on a different one, that often does the trick.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have a writer's block?
Well, I'm not sure if I would call it writer's block, but when I have been writing in the past, generally I do it in big chunks. So, like, I try to take quite a bit of time there, devote, like, say, a month, and give myself a word count, and just try and meet that every single day. And I feel having kind of that structure to it helps out quite a bit. But then I take a lot of breaks in between, like if I take a month, I might even take more time off, which I kind of got to get out of the habit of. So say with the first book there, I think I wrote it over the course of a year, the actual writing part. And it was a month at a time. So for each month I wrote a third of the book. But then there were several months in between each time that I took the time to write. So I could have had it done a lot sooner if I hadn't have done that. But I still felt that structure helped out when I was writing. So I just kind of kept pushing past to get it written and get that word count. And I feel that really helps out quite a bit. And that's my advice, at least to other writers, if anyone else is listening to this who wants to write and gets writer block, I feel giving yourself a word count each day, make sure that it's a reasonable amount, and just trying to make sure that you keep with it.
Good advice.
So, we kind of already touched on it there, but do you have any other advice for aspiring authors there?
Yeah, I would say just go for it. If it's in you to write something, there's a story begging to be told, then just do yourself and the world a favor and just tell it. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of things to worry about. People worry about, is there going to be a market for this? Are people going to like it? Is it good enough? Is it in a state where it's perfect and it doesn't need to be edited at all? Some people really kind of expect that of themselves, and in the end, if you expect all of that from yourself, you're never going to get along with it, and you're never going to actually produce anything. Mm-hmm. So none of that matters. Just, get the story written as best you can, and then get yourself a good editor. Worry about the other stuff later. Mm-hmm. Everything can be fixed afterward. But getting the story told is the big thing, and that's something you just have to do and muscle through.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, I definitely agree with you wholeheartedly there. Just kind of the same thing. You just gotta write it. Just keep writing. If you have a writer's block, just push through it, and you just gotta get it out there. And same thing as what you were saying there. Just touch on a little bit more, like you were saying about trying to edit it perfectly. For sure, you might miss a few grammar or spelling mistakes, that sort of thing. But everyone's opinion is going to be different as far as plot and story and stuff like that. So, if you feel that the plot or the story, nobody is going to like that, you're just lying to yourself at that point, because if you like it somebody else is going to like it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a market for just about everything and anything. So there's really no point in worrying about that.
And if you go for the traditional route in publishing and they reject you, then just self-publish. Because again,
you do have backups, yes.
Yeah, and you can even just use the self-publishing, see it as a route to get you traditionally published. Like there's tons of people who have done that before, who have self-published and then sold a lot, and it was picked up by a traditional publisher. And I know that,
exactly.
I've been talking about this in my blog there a lot, and if anyone is reading that, they're gonna recognize it already. The Martian. I haven't read it, unfortunately, but I'm just raving about the movie there, and just it started out as a self-published novel because nobody would pick it up, and now look at it, right? So
yeah, fantastic.
He wrote it and he did it. So just kind of get it done.
Yeah, even if you have to view the self-publishing route as the learning curve that you use to get yourself ready, publish 10 short stories if you have to, publish 2 novels. It's not necessary to have as a goal, well, I'm self-publishing this specifically so that I can get picked up by, that's a dream that you can have, to get picked up by a big publisher, but having it as a goal, that's a bit more dicey because you can't control that. But every book that you put out is definitely going to be practice, and it's definitely going to make you better each time, which is I think the big value in it. And then if along the way you pick up a following, you pick up a fan base, and you start selling a lot, then hey, score.
Yeah. And I mean, even Stephen King, he got rejected 20 some odd times or so.
He did.
Before he got picked up, and now look at him. So
yeah.
He just kept writing, he just kept doing it, and he kept persevering. And I think that's the best advice that anyone can give, is just to keep doing it. So
definitely.
Well, that kind of is all of our questions there. So we'll just shamelessly plug our novels now before we close this off. So I have a few novels there. If you want to check them out, go to amazon.com/author/J McLean. That's JMCLEAN, not MAC, as it's often mistaken for. And check them out and let me know what you think there, and let us know in the comments if you've read them or if you like them, etc., etc.
Okay. On my side, I've at the moment only got the one book out. It's The Birth of Chaos, also available on Amazon. And yeah, you can just do a search at Amazon. So I don't have the direct URL right with me now, but yeah, if you search Birth of Chaos on Amazon, you should have it there somewhere on the first page. Hopefully. Please tell me if it's not.
I think it is, so. Alrighty, so thank you for joining us here on Second Drafts Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on everything that you need to write, edit, and publish your way. And once again, leave us a comment. Let us know what you'd like to see from us in future podcasts. And we'll see you next time.
Great. See you.
Do you want to support production of this YouTube series? Visit www.patreon.com/jmclean and become a patron today.